Oh, hey there. Hey, this is Ken, and thank you for tuning into the Model Building and Retirement channel. So in this episode, I'm going to show you how I built this 1971 Ford F-250 4x4 Custom made by Moebius. My first Moebius kit that I built. Came out pretty nice, so let's roll the credits and we'll get going.
Sponsored by Model Makers Workshop. Need parts for your next model project? Model Makers Workshop has you covered with the best aftermarket accessories around. And by Gaahleri, your one-stop shopping for all your airbrush needs.
So this was really a fun build, and I got to tell you, I love the fitment on this truck. Everything had a place to positively secure with glue. Maybe one or two spots, maybe not so much, but for the most part, everything fit like a glove. Were a few blunders along the way, but it was all me learning my way around a different kind of model and not paying attention to the instructions. But let's get into the unboxing and the build and take a look. Okay, so this is going to be my first build of a Moebius kit. So this is going to be the 1971 Ford F-250 Custom 4x4. And we're going to do an unboxing to get started. It feels kind of heavy, and I've heard that once you open this box, you cannot get everything back inside. I feel as though that may be true. But let's get inside and take a look. Okay, get the cover off. Okay, so first thing I see is a couple chrome trees in here. Fairly detailed. I'm going to leave them in the bag for right now. Okay, looks like we're molded into a tan color here. But we got our cab. Looks pretty good. Okay, then you got a set of 4 tires here. Pretty nice looking mutters on there. Okay, real nice open grill. I like that. Some more chrome parts. Okay, then you got your clear parts. You got headlights, windshields. Can't make them all out here, but looks like maybe dome lights and perhaps tail lights. Okay, then we got our engine block and parts. Under the hood accessories, I see master cylinder, brake parts, some interior parts, including the dashboard there. And we got various parts here. Looks like the inner part of the tailgate, some interior parts, door card, underbody, belly pan, hood. The outside of your tailgate and miscellaneous pieces, including suspension and steering. And then you got your bed and side rails and wheel wells. Your bumper, springs, suspension parts, exhaust. And a whole bunch more miscellaneous parts. Looks like there's some suspension parts or some engine parts and various details in there. Okay, so I've never even set eyes on Moebius instructions before. Got a nice colorful art on the front of it. Okay, it's one of those big fold-out sheets here. Looks fairly detailed. So you got two sides of a big fold-out sheet here. Yeah, look like good instructions. We'll find out once we get into the build. Who needs instructions, right? Well, okay, that's pretty cool. They give you 1971 Ford colors. Pretty cool. And different color variations, you know, whether it's two-tone or standard tone or whatnot. Application of where the decals are going to go. That's kind of nice. I've not seen that before. It's easy enough to look up, but it's nice to just have it handy right there in the instructions. And then here we have a detail sheet. Let's see what's in there. Okay, so for your decal seat, it's pretty cool. They do give you interior cloth for your seats in a decal form. Some nice big graphics with the eagle there. That might be something to look into. And a bunch of little details here for engine compartment and emblems and whatnot. So, and some license plates. Very good. Okay, so I didn't catch it on video, but I do have a picture here I'll put up. There's some injector pin marks on the inside of the bed that will barely show, but I really didn't want them to show because they're pretty big. So I'm using a little bit of Tamiya putty here and just going to sand that down off camera. And then we'll go to primer. Everything else has been washed and ready to go. Okay, I must have accidentally bumped the setting on my camera because I see it's a little bit blurry and I see the frame rate must be off because the LEDs are blinking. So pardon that. Anyways, usually I do all my painting before I do any assembly whatsoever. But in looking at that bed, I really don't want to use super glue, which I typically use for paint-on-paint surfaces. So I decided to use regular Tamiya thin set model glue and glue all this together before I start painting. So the whole bed is going to be one assembly when I go to paint. So I'm going to speed up the assembly of the rear bed area by 4x. Alright, so we got all the body parts cleaned, prepped, sanded, washed, glued together, whatever it takes, ready for paint and actually primer. So I'm going to use Mr. Surfacer 1000 Gray Primer, and I'm going to spray that on in my booth, so I'll meet you over at the booth. Okay, so I shot 2 coats of Mr. Surfacer 1000 Gray Primer on everything, and I'll go ahead and speed this up by 4x. Alright, so the primer has cured for about 2 hours. So what I'm going to do is just give everything a nice light sanding. And I'm going to apply my first coat of color. It's going to be white. And that's going to be just on the bottom half of the truck, like a two-tone paint job, as shown in the picture here. And that is going to be shot with MCW Finishes, number 6330 Wimbledon White enamel. Okay, so we're at my favorite place, and that is the booth. And I'm using my Moebius 0.3 millimeter airbrush and needle and nozzle combo, and diluted my paint, or mixed my MCW paint 1:1, and added 10% hardener to it, and spraying about 18 to 20 psi pressure, and just 2 medium wet coats. I'll go ahead and speed this up. Okay, so the Wimbledon white has been allowed to cure overnight, and I did have hardener in it, and I also put it in my dehydrator for 6 hours at 113 degrees. So it's been almost 24 hours. So feels nice and slick, so I think it's fine to tape off now. And one thing I forgot to do that I'm going to do now, I would have preferred to do it before primer, but it has some pretty distinct Ford lettering on the front of the hood here, and I am going to do bare metal under the paint. And it's not too late. I can put that on now and then paint the blue on there, the second tone. But it would have been a little bit better to do it before the primer, because the primer would have helped seal up and hide the edges a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little bare metal foil for each letter and apply them with a Q-tip, and then I'll be right back for the cutting. Okay, so I put my bare metal foil in place and burnished it down. So what I did is I left one to show you what it looked like when I first put it down. But all I did is I burnished that down with a cotton swab real good, made sure I got the profile of the letters covered extremely well. And then I used my scalpel blade and just carefully cut around the edges of the letters the best I can. And I did not cut out the centers like in the D or the O. I'm going to let the paint just fill up in there. And then when I go to burnish this throughout the process to expose the chrome, I'm going to have to be very careful not to dig into there and just kind of wipe across the top, sort of like a block sand. So that's all burnished down really well. Again, this would have been better before the primer because each coat will hide that same, but I think I cut close enough to the letters where that's going to work. Because I'll be putting about 3 coats of blue color on there. And then, of course, there'll be some clear coat going on the car, too. So I have to do that under my microscope, too, or my magnifier. So I'm going to get that cut off, and then we're going to start taping.
Okay, so it's time to tape off so I can paint my blue. And I'm just going to use a vinyl fine line tape because it has a really crisp edge. And then I'll be using frog tape, a low tack, to mask the rest of the body. And the instructions are really cool because it includes this little sheet inside which has all the factory colors for the truck, but it also shows you how you wear or how you would apply your multiple colors depending on the option of the truck, which is pretty cool. So I opted for the deluxe two-tone, the one in the middle there. Okay, so I've already got the fine line down. It's kind of hard to see because it's kind of a light color and we're going against the white there, but I'm right on that trim line where the chrome is going to be down the spear of the truck there, and I'm going to burnish that down extremely well, and then I'll use my frog tape and I'm going to tape off the rest of that white. Okay, so I got the rest of the truck all masked off with the low-tack frog tape, and just when I get to the booth, I'm going to make sure I push all that down one last time before I spray. And I'll be spraying that with MCW's Super Blue Enamel number 7250E, and that is going to be mixed 1-to-1 with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner and about 10% hardener just to let it cure up a little bit quicker, and let's go to the booth. Okay, so I'm at the booth and I'm using my Moebius 0.3 millimeter airbrush again, and still about 18 to 20 psi pressure. And first I dust in my paint very light in my nooks and crannies, and then I'm going to apply 2 medium wet coats, and I'm going to wait about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to add a little extra reducer to my paint and lay on a nice wet third coat. I'm going to go ahead and speed that up by 4x. The paint's been drying for about 45 minutes to an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and pull my masking now. I like to do that while the paint is still tacky. That way you're not peeling up any paint or chipping it or anything like that. So we'll speed that up here and you can see what it looks like. I pull the tape back against itself when I do this.
Okay, so the cab looks pretty good. Nice crisp lines, no bleed through anywhere. And of course that trim is going to get some chrome on it anyways, if there was any problem, because it is still tacky. So I'm going to put this in a dehydrator and let it start curing, and we'll be back.
Okay, so now it's time to expose those bare metal foiled letters that are under the paint. So I'm dampening a little Q-tip with some Mr. Color leveling thinner, and not sopping wet, just slightly dampened. And I'm very carefully going to just hit the very top edges of the letters, not the inside edge, not the middle anyways, and not outside of that area. And that is just to soften up the paint a little bit because it has that hardener in there. And then I'm going to follow up with some 5/1000 Trizact and just wipe right across the top. Again, not dwelling on anything, I'm just skimming the top of it to expose those letters. And finally, a little bit of a burnishing with a toothpick to finish it off. And you can see how nice that looks in the end. They look like separately applied letters. Okay, so next up I'm just preparing the body for clear coat here. For the main part I'm using 5/1000 Trizact just to scuff the paint up a little bit. And if I have any stubborn little dust barbs, I'll switch over to 6/1000 mesh sandpaper. And the whole purpose is get rid of all those dust barbs before you go to clear, because they'll only grow and leave a lump through your clear. And then when you sand it, you're going to be sanding through your clear down to that bump. I'm going to speed this up so you can see the process. Okay, so next up I'm going to start assembling all the sub-assemblies that I can that are all going to be painted the same color. So right now I'm gathering all the engine components. I'm going to get those all glued together and they'll be painted forward blue. So I'm going to get them ready to paint along with my body. And I did the same thing with the frame and suspension. Got everything that was going to be same color all assembled, and I'm going to paint that flat black with Kaleido black, flat black primer. And here we see the finished product on the engine paint and the frame. And then also off camera, I used Revell chrome spray and painted my resin wheels. Of course, they were primered first, and then I painted them with the Revell chrome spray and let them sit for about a week before I handled them any further. Okay, and as I have the body all prepped for clear coating, I'm also going to gather up all my other parts and do a big painting session. So I'm going to be separating all my colors and getting them all set up on little skewers.
Okay, going to go for a little bit of a paint marathon here, so I'm separating more colors out. So on the left here, everything here is going to go gloss black, and I'm going to use my Kaleido gloss black primer. The upholstery and door cards are going to go white, and the oil filter using Kaleido white. The exhaust and alternator is going to go stainless steel Kaleido, and then the rack, the roll bar with the lights on top. I decided, you know, I got a blue and white truck. Why not? Because it's the 250th anniversary of our independence. why not get a little red in there too? So the roll bar is going to be red. That way I have a red, white, and blue truck. Speaking of blue, the interior, there are other interior parts, blue carpeting, blue steering column, and all that. I'm not going to spray that right now because the seats are also going to be two-toned and the door cards. So first I'm going to spray the white on those. So I'm going to do all that off camera because I think you've seen me spray enough airbrush details before. So just going to go ahead and speed that process up by getting it all done, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm getting close to applying my clear coat, and I really should have done this before I even started painting, but I'm going to do it before clear coat. So what I did is just lightly sanded with 5/1000 Trizec, just to bump down any dust knobs or whatnot before I go to clear. But the other thing I wanted to do is I'll be installing this roll bar and lighting panel here in the truck. And you can see it's pinned, but there's nothing here. But if you flip it over, you'll see it has provisions, which is pretty nice. So I'm going to carefully drill those out now using my little pin vise and a very similar diameter drill bit. Okay, so we got one through. I'm going to do the other three the same exact way.
Okay, so it's time to mix up my clear, and I'm going to be using MCW Clear Enamel number 1017E, and that is going to be used in conjunction with their hardener, and that is a clear enamel hardener 1017EH, not to be confused with their hardener for the regular enamels. And then I'm going to be mixing some Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. So the ratio on this is 2 parts clear to 1 part hardener and 1 part Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. And for the final coat, I usually will add a little bit more reducer. Okay, so let's get over to the booth and do some clear coating. Okay, back at my booth, having a good time here, and I'm going to spray 3 medium wet coats of clear, and I'm going to wait about 10 minutes between the coats, and on the third coat I'm going to add a little bit more leveling thinner just to make that really flow out of my gun, using the Moebius 0.3 millimeter airbrush and about 18 to 20 psi pressure. And yes, just so you know, the roll bar was painted with Kaleido water-based red, but it is okay to use 2K clear on top of that with no reaction whatsoever. So I just wanted to point that out in case you're ever in that dilemma. All right, I'm going to go to fast forward for the rest of the paint job. And as long as I was at the booth, I cleaned up my airbrush real quick and kept the same settings, but now I'm using my Tamiya X85 rubber black mixed 1-to-1 with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, and I'm going to apply 2 real nice coats onto my 3D tires.
Okay, I'm really excited to demonstrate or try my new camera mount here, because one of my problems, I think I've mentioned it before, is when you're building for the camera, sometimes you cannot see what you're doing as well as the people on the receiving end of the video do. And I can see that in the quality of my builds. You know, if I'm doing something very detailed for the camera, it looks okay from where I'm sitting. But then when I look at the model a little bit later, it's like, oh, that's crooked, or I didn't get that quite right. So this new angle, I think, is going to solve that, because it gets me real close to my magnifier. In fact, I'm going to be able to work and adjust that camera way up here to where my magnifier is in focus.
Okay, so the wheels and tires have been cured and they're ready to be married together here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking some super glue and putting just a couple dots like on 3 of those internal spokes of the tire, and then I'm going to feed the wheel through. And I'm wearing the glove just to make sure I still don't get any fingerprints or oils or acids from my hand into that or into the Revell chrome spray. Okay, so next up I'm doing the white letters on the tires, and I'm using Kaleido White, and I'm diluting it with their thinner just a little bit to thin it out a little bit. Even though it's airbrush ready, as it sits in a cap there, it just gets thickened up a little bit. And I'm just taking a tip of a sharp toothpick and just dipping it into my cap of paint and just very carefully doing the letters of the tires here. And when it's all done, I think it looks pretty convincing, nice and clear. I tried the jelly roll pen, but to me it's just too thick and it kind of leaves little stringers. And a paintbrush is just a little too thick as well. So to me, I think the toothpick method worked in this case the best. Okay, so next up it's time to start assembly on the engine. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this footage up a little bit. Okay, and then here's the finished 394 barrel engine all assembled. Okay, and then before I get my wheels installed, I'm going to take a little bit of the Kaleido yellow and I'm going to paint my shocks yellow. Okay, so it's time to attach the wheels to the chassis, and these are the aftermarket 3D wheels, but I had to create a spacer inside because that was set way too, the offset was too far inboard, so I found some scrap styrene in my junk box and glued them into place, so that just spaces the wheel out a little further because these are considerably larger than the kit wheels. All right, so they're going to fit pretty well right onto this area here, and I'm going to use styrene glue and hopes that it bonds it the most securely. So we'll get started on that. And in this case, I'm using Humbrol liquid poly, only because it's a little bit thicker and won't evaporate as fast as the Tamiya, because I'm not going to be able to get the glue in where I need it. So I'm going to have to put the glue on and then transfer the tire to the model. So hold that in place for a little while for that glue to start setting. Okay, so I got two of the wheels on. I'm going to let that set up really good before I flip it over and do the other side. Okay, so while I'm waiting for the wheels to dry on the one side, I'm going to turn my attention to the interior. So it's going to be two-tone with blue. Now, the plaid is a decal that came with the kit. And of course, it's way too shiny, so I will dull that down with some flat or dull coat. And then I'm going to mask off the inner door panels here, which will remain white, but the rest of the door is going to be blue. Blue carpeting, blue package tray behind the seat. And I'm going to spray that with Kaleido Sky Blue water-based paint, and it should be ready to mix and not have to dilute it all. Okay, so I have to mask the door cards. I'll do that off camera and I'll be right back. Okay, so to mask the door cards here, I'm just using some bare metal foil around the edges. It's just a little bit easier when you got like window cranks and armrests on the way or whatnot. So I will mask that just like I was going to do chrome, and then I will just reverse cut it and leave the foil where I don't want the paint. And then any area in the middle there, I'll just use a little bit of my frog tape to tape off the rest of it. And then after it's all painted, I'll just remove the masking. Okay, once it's all taped off, I'll head over to the booth and I'm going to shoot it with that sky blue Kaleido paint. No thinning required. Let's get over to the booth. Okay, so here we are again. Same thing, Moebius 0.3 millimeter airbrush. I bumped my pressure up to about 25 psi, and that is Kaleido Sky Blue, ready to use right out of the bottle. And I sprayed 3 coats on that, waiting about 10 minutes between each coat. And I'll go ahead and speed that footage up. Alright, so I let that paint dry up for about an hour, and I'm going to go ahead and peel off the masking and see what it looks like. I'll show you at least one of the door panels here. And every time I pull backwards against the paint. But that bare metal foil makes a really nice mask, especially when you're working with little tight areas there. Better than I probably could have done with any tape, especially with the little profiles there of the door handles and the armrests and things of that nature. Alrighty. Okay, so next up, the decals that went onto the seats looked a little bit on the glossy side, so I'm going to just brush on a little bit of Kaleido matte varnish, and I'm just going to use a nice wide little brush there and put some of that clear coat in a cap, and I'll just brush that on and let it air dry. And while I was at it, I went ahead and did the carpet area too instead of flocking. I didn't think you were going to be able to see that flock inside the car, so I just dulled that up a little bit. Okay, so next we're going to move on to detailing the dashboard. Okay, so now I'm going to work a little bit on detailing out the dashboard. The kit does give you a decal for the instrument cluster, so I'm going to put a little bit of micro set in there just to make sure it's going to adhere, because it's got a little bit of a profile there. And that's just a water slide decal. And then I'll, once I get that into position, I'll take a Q-tip and just sop up a little bit of the water. Okay, then to finish it off, just a little bit of a water-based black Kaleido, and I'm going to take a detail brush there, and I'm going to detail out the radio bezel and the heater controls, and I'm going to hit all the little the switches and whatnot. And instead of being chrome switches, I'm going to go ahead and hit them with black, because you know, trucks were not really fully optioned back in the day. So okay, next up I used a little bit of UV resin and applied that with a toothpick, and just very carefully covered the instrument bezel and hit that for about 90 seconds with the UV light, and it gave it a real nice lens-like appearance. Okay, so the paint has been allowed to cure for about 24 hours, so I am going to wet sand, cut, buff, and polish that out. And I'm going to do that off camera, but if you want to see my 4-part series on how to get a show car finish, part 4 of that series is about the sanding and buffing. And I'll have links in the description for that 4-part series, so you can see exactly how that is done. And after about an hour's worth of sanding and polishing, this is the finished product, and it's got a really brilliant shine and no orange peel, nice and glossy. Alright, I'm showing a little bit of the bare metal foil work here in fast forward. I'll just show you how I did this one rocker, and then we'll move on and I'll just show you a summary of what I did. Alright, so I've been working on the bare metal foil, working around the windshield here. Now the bottom of the windshield had no mold line or anything to work with, so I took a piece of tape and ran it along my foil to give me an edge, and that worked out pretty good. Got this drip rail all done and all the way around the back, and got the rockers done. So on the sides, the kit comes with these spears, and I started to glue that on, but too bulky and toy looking to me. I wished I would have thought of that before I started, because I had to clean up glue and everything else and sand and polish again, but just way too bulky. So I'm going to bare metal foil that spear. I think it's going to just look a lot better. So what I'm going to do is I'll cut it, install it, and then I'm going to put a tape line on there, and I'll put that on camera so you can see that tape line, so I have a place to cut along. So Let me get that bare metal foil and tape on and we'll be back. Okay, so like I said, instead of using the chrome trim that was meant for the spears, I decided to use foil. And so I laid my foil down, and then there is a clear guide tape. Why they made it clear, I don't know. It's made for this purpose, but it's pretty hard to see when it's clear. But anyways, that just helps you get a really nice straight line. So you put your foil down first, and then you lay your tape down, and then you've got your X-Acto knife, or in my case, I use a scalpel with a number 11 blade, and it gives me a nice little guide to just run my razor blade down for a really nice straight line. So I did the top of the spear with the clear tape, but that was so hard to see that I just went to my regular 3M blue fine line tape. I hate to waste that because it's a good masking tape, but I need to see at the same time. So I installed that and made another cut there. Okay, so next up I'm installing the glass, and this is where I made probably my biggest blunder of them all on the model is you do install the glass from the inside, but evidently it's supposed to snap all the way through and actually clip onto the outside. And then you would do your bare metal foil on a profile of the glass. By the time I realized that, it was when I was trying to fit the interior in there, and the dashboard kept hitting the windshield. Because I had already glued that in with Mod Podge, and I tried to cut it loose, and I was going to break the windshield. So I ended up grinding the bottom of the windshield to make everything fit, and it looks okay. But if you're building this model, you shouldn't even need any glue from what I understand. You would just push that windshield all the way through, and it'll snap into place with, I believe it's the top and bottom would be on the outside, and the two sides would show up on the inside. So if that makes any sense. Okay, so next up I moved on to the front grille, and what a nice grille. It's got the cutouts already, so it looks really authentic, and it has separately applied headlights, and that's what I'm installing now. So what I did is just diluted a little bit of Mod Podge and a cap with a little bit of water, and just use a detail brush, and I put like 3 little dots right around the perimeter of where that glass was gonna sit, and then I used a jewelry picker to carefully set my lens into place, and I let that set up for a little while, and then I came back and just gave that a real nice coating of diluted Mod Podge, and it gives it a real nice gloss and locks it in the rest of the way. So I just apply that diluted Mod Podge now all over that entire lens on both sides. And then I broke out my Tamiya orange and hit the 2 little turn signals or parking lights there on the bottom of the grille. And while I was at it, I cleaned my brush and used some red Tamiya clear for the taillights, because the taillights are actually on the clear tree, so you got to hit the backs of that with the Tamiya red. And then when I installed those later, I did the same thing with the Mod Podge diluted on the outside to gloss them up a little bit. And then next up, before I installed the grille to the front of the truck, because it has that see-through grille with the cutouts there, I had way too much brightness on the front of the truck where I painted that white. So I'm going to use a black acrylic pen and put a couple coats of black on there before I glue that into place. So next up came the assembly of the interior, gluing everything together. Once again, everything has a very nice positive fit, so you will not have any issues at all at this part. Okay, so at this point I was going to install the interior tub into the body, and that is when I discovered my windshield error. And of course it wouldn't fit. The windshield is in the way of the dashboard. I tried to remove that glass, but I was going to end up breaking it because it was glued in so good. And turns out it doesn't need any glue at all if you install it correctly. The only way I saved it is I took my Dremel tool and a sanding drum, and I just sanded the bottom of the windshield to make room for the interior tub. And in the end, it worked. Okay, so once I got the interior tub all figured out and fit back into the car or the truck, a couple dots of glue, and I installed the firewall. And next up is a couple dots of glue and the front radiator support. And then it was on to the trim for the hood. That piece there has a nice little groove and glues right in. I used a couple dots of super glue for that. But then for the side emblems on the hood, just a little dot of white glue. And I'm going to use my little jewelry picker and pick up the F250 emblem and just carefully set that into place and let that just set up and dry, and then I'll go in with a little bit of diluted Mod Podge on the bottom edge of it just to make sure it's glued into place real good. And next I turned my attention to the light bar, and I brushed on some Fusion Firm onto the two light fixtures and let that cure for a couple days. And now I'm installing the lenses to the lights just like I did on the headlights. A couple dots of diluted super glue and a jewelry picker to set the lens into place, and we're good to go. Okay, then moving forward, I apologize. I had already attached the cab, and I didn't even have that on video. It went together so super easily. The engine fits right into the cradle there, and a couple dots of super glue, and there's positive placement on the frame front and back, so you can't screw up the alignment. So I'm attaching the bed now, and I'm going to put a couple dots of super glue just on the two back pins, and I'm going to glue that into place, and I'm leaving the front loose in case I have to shim it. And I did have to shim it just a little bit to line up with the lines on the front of the cab. Probably about 10 thousandths. I just used a little bit of plastic styrene and glued the front together. And the decal sheet had a couple American flags on there, so I thought it'd be a nice touch to put an American flag on the back window of our red, white, and blue truck, all loaded up with its hunting equipment. Okay, and this is where I'm doing that adjustment for the front alignment to the bed, to the cab. And it was off just a little bit, so I did put a little shim in there off camera. But I was looking at it and eyeballing it there to see just how much I had to shim it. Truck's really coming together. Very pretty. I'm really happy with the way she's looking. And next up, a little bit of diluted Mod Podge into the chrome taillight holder, and I'm going to fix that lens into there. Okay, then I just spent the next half hour just putting all the little details on there, gluing in the taillights into the truck and whatnot, attaching the door handles, and this is the final piece of the puzzle right there, the side mirrors. Everything had a positive fit, so just a little tiny dot of glue and put that into place, and we are ready now for the final reveal. And here we are at the final reveal. Man, I love my color choice on this. I couldn't be happier. Good old MCW colors are beautiful. Everything fit together extremely well. Again, the only big blunder was the windshield, and that was just me not understanding how the Moebius kit works. Snaps in from the inside and partially shows on the outside, and that's what you will bare metal foil. And by the time I realized that, it was too late to fix it, so I just had to adjust it and live with it. Very, very happy. And, I did the engine compartment with a lot of detail too, and aftermarket wheels. Otherwise, it's all the stock kit. Kit comes with a lot of spare parts because it does come with all the other variations of the Ford pickup truck all built into the same kit, although the instructions only dictate the pieces for this one. But all in all, very, very happy with this build. There's that engine compartment with all that detail. Okay, well, very good. Now it's time for the next kit, isn't it?
Well, I hope you enjoyed my build video on the Moebius 1971 Ford F-250 4x4 custom kit. A lot of fun, like I said. The few blunders along the way were all mine. This was also my first attempt at really getting a little bit more detail going on in the engine compartment. Because I plumbed the windshield washer bottle and also added like a voltage regulator. Just trying to up my game a little bit there. A lot of fun. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, hit the like, subscribe, and comment below. Appreciate you watching. Thanks.